The speed record no engine can beat after 36 years belongs to arguably America's favorite outboard manufacturer, who did something absolutely insane in 1989. Bob Wartinger crushed the previous world record of 169 miles per hour with one special secret. But here's what's crazy. During testing, they actually went even faster than their record-setting speed before disaster struck. And we're going to tell you how fast they went and how. This wasn't some NASA project. This was a bunch of guys who said, "Hold my beer," and strapped a 10,000 RPM, alcohol-burning two-stroke monster to a knife blade with a cockpit. Yet somehow, nobody's beaten it since. Let's talk about what made this engine so special, because trust me, this wasn't your uncle's fishing boat motor. The Evinrude 3.5-litre V8 was a modified version of OMC's high-performance lineup that originally debuted as a 3.6-litre in 1985, officially rated at 275 horsepower. But here's where it gets interesting, and a bit controversial. Industry insiders knew these engines were seriously sandbagging. Dyno tests regularly showed them cranking out closer to 300 horsepower at the prop, and that was in stock form. The team, led by legendary speed record holder Bob Wartinger and funded by Bedford Bud Davey, didn't just bolt this engine onto any old boat. They took a 20-foot Carlson-built 3-point hydroplane, essentially a knife blade with a cockpit, and started modifying everything. The engine itself was converted to run on alcohol fuel instead of gasoline, which allowed them to push compression ratios through the roof. They fitted an overdrive gear case that created a fascinating mechanical arrangement. Engine spinning at 9,000 RPM, propeller whirling at an even more insane 10,000. Gary Garbrecht's company, Mac Performance, created the custom propellers that were genuine works of art. These weren't cast in one piece like normal props. They actually welded the blades onto the hub, giving unprecedented control over pitch and design. The trade-off: if you hit something at those speeds, you'd better have a warehouse full of spares. This detail would become painfully relevant during the record attempt. The hull modifications were equally extreme. They installed what was registered as APBA's #1 cockpit capsule, basically America's first official survival pod for high-speed boating. Builder Matt Docker had to modify the cowling 3 times just to get Wartinger to fit inside properly. They experimented with different configurations: shoes on the transom, then off, various rudder setups, including an inboard-style rudder on the right side, closed cooling systems with custom radiators. They even locked the engine at a specific angle because the torque was so violent it would literally try to twist itself off the transom. The skeg was removed from the lower unit, and steering was accomplished entirely through dual rudders. Testing took place primarily at Lake Hamilton, Florida, at Bedford Davey's second effort headquarters. Wartinger recalls they tested the equivalent of 2 years, except for summers. Every modification was methodically evaluated, every failure analyzed, every success documented. This wasn't cowboy engineering, it was systematic, relentless pursuit of speed. Hey, if you're enjoying this deep dive into one of boating's most insane achievements, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next, because during the actual record runs, they faced equipment failures, weather problems, and a catastrophic collision that nearly ended everything. To really appreciate what Wartinger and his team accomplished, we need to understand the speed game landscape in the 1980s. The outboard speed record had been a battleground between manufacturers for decades, with Mercury and OMC locked in an arms race that made corporate rivalries look like playground squabbles. The modern era of speed records really began heating up in 1982, when Bob Spaulding from Great Britain pushed the mark to 139.6 miles per hour using a Johnson V8 prototype. Rick Frost followed up in 83, nudging it to 144.16 miles per hour with another Johnson power plant. Then tragedy struck in 1984, when George Andrews set a new benchmark at 157.43 miles per hour with a Mercury V6. Only to lose his life attempting to better his own achievement. By 1987, Bobby Herring, who would later assist with Wartinger's attempt, had raised the bar to 169.63 miles per hour, using an earlier iteration of the Evinrude V8 setup on the same Carlson hull. But everyone knew there was more speed available if someone was willing to take the risks. Enter Bedford Davey, a fascinating character who bridged boating's golden age with its modern era. Back in 1938, Davey had set his own speed record of 78.121 miles per hour with the legendary Draper X motor. He'd raced on the East Coast in the late 1920s and early 30s, always dressed in white because apparently looking sharp while risking your life was important back then. Now in his later years, Davey had become obsessed with pushing outboard technology to its absolute limit. He had the vision, the connections, and crucially the deep pockets to make it happen. The speed record game wasn't just about bragging rights, it was about corporate survival. In the 1960s, OMC had dominated with Hugh Untrop setting multiple records, including 114.65 miles per hour in March 1960 and 122.97 miles per hour by September. Mercury fought back hard throughout the 1970s and early 80s, with each manufacturer pouring millions into racing development that would supposedly trickle down to consumer models. The reality, these racing engines had about as much in common with what Dad bolted to his bass boat as a Formula One car has with your Honda Civic. The progression of speeds tells a fascinating story of technological leaps. From 1924's pedestrian 11 miles per hour to breaking 100 miles per hour in 1954 with a Lesco 4-cylinder, each barrier fell as engineers discovered new ways to cheat physics. The 60 cubic inch displacement limit era ended in 1960 at 115.547 miles per hour. Then unlimited displacement rules opened Pandora's box. Suddenly, bigger was better, and manufacturers started building engines that were basically controlled explosions in aluminium casings. The late 1980s represented the pinnacle of two-stroke development. These engines were mechanical marvels in their simplicity, firing every revolution instead of every other like four-strokes, developing explosive power from relatively compact packages. While the automotive world was embracing fuel injection and computer controls, marine racing remained in the analog realm of carburetors, mechanical timing, and seat-of-the-pants tuning. This meant that if you knew the black arts of two-stroke tuning, you could extract absolutely ridiculous power levels. What made the Evinrude V8 special wasn't just displacement or cylinder count, it was the combination of massive displacement in a two-stroke configuration. OMC had originally introduced these beasts as 3.6-liter engines in 1985, then enlarged them to 4 liters by 1988. But for the record attempt, they went with a specially prepared 3.5-liter version, likely for class regulations or optimal power-to-weight ratio. These weren't just engines, they were barely controlled chaos that happened to spin a propeller. The record attempt was sanctioned for 4 days at the end of November 1989 at Parker, Arizona, on a stretch of the Colorado River that had become speedboating's proving grounds. Ted May served as the official referee, and the team had hired helicopters, rescue crews, and timing officials. This was a serious operation. Day 1 started before dawn. At 5 a.m., with the desert air cold and dense, perfect for making power, Wartinger strapped into the capsule. The engine fired with its characteristic two-stroke bark, amplified to ear-splitting levels. The first run looked perfect. Using nitrous oxide injection for the acceleration zone, the boat rocketed through the first kilometer. By the timing trap, unofficial readings showed 180 miles per hour. Then came the first gut punch. Complete timing equipment failure. The scanners missed both the initial pass and the return run. An entire day of preparation, risk, and fuel burned for nothing. Zero official data. Day 2 brought different challenges. Desert winds turned the river into a minefield of waves. At these speeds, even small ripples become launching ramps. Multiple attempts were aborted. Frustration mounted as conditions refused to cooperate. Day 3 delivered catastrophe. During a high-speed test run, with the boat running beautifully and speeds approaching 190 miles per hour plus, they hit an unknown object in the water. The impact was devastating. Wartinger recalls a huge chunk being torn from the boat's transom area. and through the night, probably some duct tape. Everyone knew they were operating on borrowed time. The boat was compromised, the engine had been thrashed for 3 days, and the weather window was closing. November 30th dawned with acceptable conditions. Not perfect, but acceptable. Wartinger later admitted he climbed into that capsule wondering about his sanity. The patched boat felt different, sounded different, but there was no backing out now. The first official pass was clean. The nitrous system functioned perfectly through the acceleration zone. As the engine climbed toward its 9,000 RPM peak, the overdrive gear case pushed the propeller even faster. The boat stayed planted despite the damage. The timers worked. Good speeds recorded. Racing against the clock, regulations demanded the return run within 1 hour. The crew refueled and performed lightning-quick checks. No time for thorough inspections. Just add fuel, check vitals, and pray nothing critical had broken. The return pass was even faster. When officials calculated the two-way average, the number was stunning: 176.556 miles per hour. Not just a new record, but complete annihilation of Herring's previous mark. But here's what haunts everyone involved. They left speed on the table. During pre-crash testing, the boat had easily exceeded 190 miles per hour. Gary Garbrecht and the team were confident they could have pushed past the magical 200 miles per hour barrier if not for that impact. Wartinger himself believes they sacrificed at least 25 miles per hour to that unknown object in the water. Interesting video so far? Well, make sure you're subscribed for more amazing stories like this one. The boating world's reaction was immediate and explosive. A modified production outboard had just gone faster than most people had ever driven a car. Every boating magazine ran cover stories. Mainstream media picked up the tale of these speed-obsessed madmen who'd achieved the impossible. But what's truly remarkable is the silence that followed. In all the years since that November morning, no manufacturer has mounted a serious challenge. Not Mercury with their racing heritage, not Yamaha with their engineering prowess, not even Evinrude themselves before their sad closure in 2020. Why has this record proven untouchable? Start with regulations. Environmental rules essentially executed two-stroke technology. Modern four-strokes are engineering marvels, powerful, efficient, reliable, but they're also heavier and less tolerant of extreme modifications. Running a contemporary four-stroke on alcohol at 10,000 RPM, you'd have an expensive collection of aluminium and steel confetti in seconds. Then consider economics. This attempt, even in $1989, was staggeringly expensive. Today you're talking millions for a publicity stunt that sells zero boats to families wanting reliable weekend fun. Modern manufacturers focus on fuel efficiency, quiet operation, and emissions compliance. Not exactly the stuff of speed records. The liability issues are a testament to an era when safety third was a viable business model. The influence of that modified V8 rippled throughout marine engineering for years, even as the industry pivoted away from the very technology that made it possible. Gary Garbrecht became a propeller design legend. Bob Wartinger added this crown jewel to his collection of over 110 speed records and remains active in the sport today. Bedford Davey lived to see his vision realized, proof that with enough money, expertise, and disregard for personal safety, anything is possible. Mac Performance's welded blade propellers became collector's items, even though the company eventually folded, partly due to reliability issues when their race-bred designs met real-world conditions. For perspective, in 1989, the Ferrari F40, the world's fastest production car, topped out at 201 miles per hour on smooth pavement with aerodynamic aids. Wartinger was hitting 190 plus on water, which offers all the stability of a paint mixer at those velocities. Water doesn't compress, doesn't forgive, and at those speeds might as well be concrete covered in ball bearings. The technology pioneered during this attempt influenced marine engineering for decades. The closed cooling systems they developed became standard on high-performance boats. The safety capsule concept saved countless lives. Even improvements in timing equipment and telemetry benefited the entire sport. This record represents the last stand of old-school hot rodding. Take a big engine, make it bigger, spin it faster, add exotic fuel, and hold on tight. Today's records in other categories involve computational fluid dynamics, wind tunnels, and space-age composites. Wartinger's achievement was pure mechanical violence, channeled through skill and courage. The Evinrude V8 itself deserves monument status. Owners described these engines in biblical terms: acceleration that could alter your spine alignment, sound levels that bypassed your ears and went straight to your skeleton, fuel consumption measured in gallons per minute rather than miles per gallon. Perfect for setting records, absolutely terrible for anything resembling normal use. So there you have it, the incredible saga of how a modified Evinrude 3.5-litre V8 set a speed record that has survived 36 years of technological advancement. This record stands as a monument to an era when the only question was how fast, not how safe, not how efficient. Just pure speed at any cost. Will anyone ever beat 176.556 miles per hour with an outboard? Probably not. It would require revolutionary technology, corporate backing with more dollars than cents, and regulatory exemptions that don't exist anymore. Mercury's been quiet, Yamaha's focused elsewhere, and Evinrude, they're gone, taking their two-stroke secrets to the grave. Until someone proves otherwise, that alcohol-burning, nitrous-huffing 10,000 RPM V8 remains the undisputed king. It's a glorious reminder that sometimes the old ways weren't just good enough. They were better than anything we've managed since. If you enjoyed this wild ride through powerboating's most legendary achievement, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Drop a comment below about what speed record you'd like to see broken next, and remember, life's too short for boring boats. Until next time, keep the throttle wide open.